Hi, this video is documenting the Lidar to terrain free process that was developed by AT and Larry Kuh. Um, my name is Master Blasta, and I'm going to walk you through basically a screen recording of how to do the Lidar to terrain free process. Before we get started on the screen recording and the walkthrough, couple things you have to make sure that you have in place before we get started. One is make sure you've got this PDF document, right? I would advise that you follow along in this document, right? There's check boxes, so as you go through, you can tick those off to record your progress so you don't get lost, or if you have to stop, you can come back to the same place. And the next thing is make sure that you've got the QGIS support files downloaded and you know where they're at in your computer. So they're going to look like a folder like this. And then inside them are all the files that we're going to be referring to in here. All right, we're going to have this Bing Google XYZ file that we're going to pull into QGIS. Lidar classification is for your information if you want to crack that open and take a look at it. We've got these documents that you're looking at right now, an OPCD XML document that we're going to again open up inside of QGIS. And then these are the folders that you're going to be swapping your files in and out of. And as you go through the process, you're going to be putting your files in and out of here. But you'll get familiar with these. And then there's some other things in here like this light blue overlay that you can use at the very end inside of Unity. And then this is your OPCD QGIS project template, which will be changing to the name of your course. All right, so let's get started. First of all, going back into following this document, I'm going to assume at this point that you've already done number one here. You've downloaded and you've installed QGIS. Just make sure you make a mental note of where you installed it, okay? Did you use the default area or did you use another area? That's going to be very important at some point. So just make sure you're aware of where you installed it. Also, make sure you're aware of what version. This tutorial was written on 3.22.1. I believe 3.22.2 is now available for download. So if you download 22.2, that's perfectly fine. It'll work. You just have to be aware that your directory is going to change, right? It's going to be 3.22.2 instead of 3.22.1. You're going to want to download and install CloudCompare as well. We're going to assume that you've done that before we got started. And then you'll have your shortcuts on your desktop. All right. So as far as the video goes, I'm going to close this document right here, and this is where we're going to be starting out. So, get your QGIS up and running, and we'll start right here. All right, so now that you have QGIS up and running, you're going to go into this screen here and take your mouse up to the top along the toolbar, and you're going to right-click up there. All right. Now, as you go and you're going to scroll down here, you're going to add a couple of toolbars. One is going to be the processing toolbox panel. The other one's the layer styling panel and the advanced digitizing toolbar. All right. Make sure you do not add the advanced digitizing panel. We want the advanced digitizing toolbar. Okay. Right there. That's the toolbar that we want. All right, the next thing we're going to do is set up our Google and Bing XYZ connections. So we're going to click on this little icon up here on the left, the Open Data Source Manager. We're going to click Load, and then we're going to go to our QGIS support files that we downloaded that we talked about earlier and find that Bing Google XMLYZ file. And we're going to open it up and select Import, and then we're going to check it worked by using this little drop-down panel at the top, and then we're going to close out. Moving on to the next steps, installing plugins. We're going to select the plugins menu at the top and then manage and install plugin screen. Then you're going to select the all button up there. You're going to type in geometry shapes until you find it and then install the geometry shapes plugin and then close out. Section 4 is importing a style into the style manager. So that little style manager icon up there in the toolbar, we're going to click import, then import items. We're going to browse to that OPCD XML file that was in our download files. And then this little page is going to pop up here. We're going to select that OPCD square, select import, select OPCD again, and then hit close. Now this next section is optional, but I'd highly recommend you go up here to settings, go to your options, and we're going to change the hue of our OPCD box. So up here in the selection color, you're going to pick that, change your, do this little B slider all the way to the right. That'll make it perfectly white and clear. And then we're going to change our opacity to 15%. Click OK. OK again. And we're done with that section. At this point, we're going to close down QGIS so we get a refresh of all the things that we've installed, and then you're going to open it back up again. Now that you have QGIS open, we're going to move on to section 2. Now, if you're following along in the documentation, all right, we're on this page setting up your project, obtaining LiDAR, and creating your plots. The first thing we want to do though is if you change the installation folder of your QGIS application, you need to change a couple of scripts that we have, okay? So to do that, what you're going to do is find the folder with all your downloads. So here's my QGIS download folder, okay? And then inside of that, I went into the QGIS files. And then there I've got all these different, files and these folders inside the height map. And then inside the inner and outer folders, all right, there are these scripts. Now you won't have these other folders in here or these other files because I already did the process, but you're gonna have this inner TIFF, and then in the outer, you're gonna have this outer TIFF to RAW, these BAT files, okay? What you wanna do is open up Notepad, and you're gonna take that file, and you're just gonna drag it into Notepad. Now you can see in here that there is this line up here at the top, and then here's a path. This path needs to be the path to your QGIS installation. So you can see I installed 3.22.2, so I changed this to 3.22.2. Default, it looks like that. So you need to change it to wherever you installed. I actually installed this on my D drive, so I would change this to my D drive. This is going to be important later on. We try to redo these BAT files, okay? We're close that. We're going to click Save. And we want to make sure that we do that with the outer and we do it with the inner as well. So if I open up Notepad again, I drag that inner one down there and I can see I do have it set to 2, but I do need to change this to my D drive, whereas I installed it. If you just did the default, it'll be in your C drive, but depending which version, again, you downloaded, you might need to change this directory. And there is one more file that you have to adjust as well. So let's close this one, we'll save it. Let's go back into our folder again, our TIFFs. Oops, no, wrong folder. I believe it's under our overlays. Yes, this TIFF to JPEG. We also want to change that one as well because that's definitely going to be looking for the QGIS folder as well. So TIFF to JPEG. Let's scroll this down. And again, for me, I need to change this to the D. Again, you might not need to change this. We need to do a little bit of organizational work first. So we're going to go to the QGIS support files that you downloaded. And then inside there, you'll see a folder. We're going to copy that. And we're going to move it to, if you create a project folder that is going to hold all your course information, you can create one if you don't have one already. Just call it projects somewhere on your computer. And you're going to put it in there, paste it in there. Then you're going to open that project folder up. Well, first of all, you want to rename it to the name of your course. For our example, we're doing a course called Oakmont. You're going to open up that folder, and then inside that folder, there is a template file for QGIS. The default name is OPCD QGIS project _ template. You're going to rename that folder, or that file, sorry, to the name of your course as well. Now that you have that done, you're going to, inside of QGIS, you're going to go to your project menu at the top. You're going to go down and click Open, and then you're going to open up that file you just renamed. Couple things of note in here. You'll notice that you'll have your Google and your Bing layers already in there from when we added them during the setup. The next thing you're going to do is go down to the bottom in that search field and put your mouse down there, and you're going to click and you're going to go to the nominatum geocoder and then click on it. And then once you've clicked on that, you're going to type in the name of your golf course down here in the bottom, and it should do an active search for it. Give it a second, it'll pop up, and then you're going to click on it. Once you click on it, your map will zoom into the area, and now you're going to kind of adjust using your mouse and zoom into the area of your course, just like you've seen on the screen there. At this point, you're just going to go up ahead and also save your project. Now the next thing you're going to do is go to bluegolf.com and do a search for your course there, in this case Oakmont Country Club. And you're going to see if there's a little icon when you do this, get the search results back. We've got Oakmont Country Club here, Oakmont, PA, and we're going to click on that little tour button. After you click on the tour, up at the top, you should see a little holes map there, and that's going to bring you a map of your course. This step is completely optional. It just helps you get a visualization of how your holes are laid out. Not all courses will have these, and if you can't find your course, don't worry about it. Just move forward. You might just have to figure out how your course is laid out via some other means if you don't have native knowledge from playing it. So you're going to click on the All button at the top right, do a snip, get your snip tool out, click on New, and then we're just going to drag over that area the best that you can. Get your course in that area, and then we're going to save that to the same folder that we created for our course. So we're in that Oakmont folder that we renamed earlier, and we're just going to call it Oakmont_layout, and it's a PNG file. The next step in the process is downloading your Lidar data from the USGS. The USGS National Map download site is linked in the documentation. All right, we are in step 4 here, downloading Lidar and setting up the correct CRS. So go ahead and go to the USGS National Download site. Once you're on the download site, you're going to make sure you click the elevation source data checkbox, and then over on the right, click on the image only. And it should look, this is at this point looks just like a kind of a Google Maps application. In the search field, type in your course. You can type in a street address, anything you need to find your course. Then in the drop-in, select it, and it's going to zoom in. So get your course into a frame. You might want to zoom out a little bit, but you're going to go up and you're going to hit the extent button, and then you're going to draw a box, approximate this size around your area. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to search for the LiDAR available that covers this area. This is going to be our inner and outer terrain area. So after you pull that box in, you can adjust it if you want, where you want it to go. You might need to play with this a little bit to make sure you get the entire area of interest that you're looking for. But now we're going to go over to search products. And the results of this are essentially all the LiDAR data that we have available to us. We're really looking for the newest LiDAR data. So you're going to have to look at the dates. The format of these is somewhat different depending on where it's sourced from. But look at the data, scroll down through, look through the entire list, and just try to find the newest data available. There we go. There's looks like there's some in here from 2017 or even 2020, 2017. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this little text box at the top, and that's going to give us a text file. And we're going to save this into our Oakmont Lidar data folder. Call it las.txt. Now let's open it up. Essentially what this folder is, it's just a bunch of URLs that point us to each of the las files. Now what we want to do is we want to edit this folder so that it only has the ones that we're interested in. So we want to get rid of the old ones and keep all these new ones. So you can see we got a list of new ones here though. Now we're going to copy all those. Now at this point, you can either use the linked free download manager that's in the documentation, or you can get another one called UGET. But the bottom line is you're going to take all these URLs of these files and you're just going to drag them into whatever tool you want to use to download these. So we're going to paste those files, those URLs in. We're going to create a subfolder. We're going to browse to one of the las directory of our Oakmont folder. So we got LiDAR, we got las, we're going to open that folder, and then we're going to download these. Could take a little bit. Some of these files can be pretty large, and if you're downloading, 10, 15, maybe 20 of them, it could take a little bit. So we'll pause the video while that downloads. Okay, so now we're back in QGIS and we're going to open up in a separate window. We're going to open up our las file that we downloaded all those las files from the USGS site. And we're just going to grab one of them and drag it into the layers window inside of QGIS. Then we're going to right click, go down to layer CRS and set CRS from layer. And now we have inside of our properties, inside the project menu, we have our CRS layer system set. Pay attention to this, okay? Realize what that system, that CRS number and what it is, and especially look at that units. In this particular example, it's in meters. Pay attention to whether it's meters or feet. Make a mental note of that. Wait till the las file is now done processing. It'll take it a couple seconds. Then we're going to remove that one because we don't really actually need it. We just used it to set the project CRS. We're going to right click on it. We're going to remove that layer. Okay. And then when we drug that layer in, it actually created a folder. Open this up here. It created a folder inside of our las, an extra folder. You'll see if you go back in there, you can delete that. It doesn't hurt if you leave it in either, but it's just taking up extra space at this point. At this point, go up and save your project. Now what we need to do is create our inner shapefile. So we're going to open up this little shapefile icon, going to go down here and open up our file saver and call that file inner. Then we're going to save it. We're going to make sure that we have a geometry type set to polygon. And very important, make sure that our CRS is our project CRS. So in that drop-down menu that you see here, make sure it's project CRS, and it should be that EPSG that we noted just a few seconds ago. So make sure that is selected. Very important. Click OK. Now we're going to go back up to our inner layer, put on layer process styling. Go in the little search down here, the down bar, and click on OPCD. Click on it, and you can see the inner changes to a circle. We're going to do the same thing now for an outer layer. So we're going to create a new one in our shapefiles called outer. Save. Geometry type is polygon. Again, project CRS, very important. Okay as well. And we're going to make that our OPCD style as well. Now let's double check our Project CRS. Very important, right? Go in here. Our units are in meters. Now we're going to browse to our directory of tools, our Oakmont directory under Heightmaps. If you're in meters, you're going to open up the min-max XLS file and you're going to rename it by doing a save as and putting the name of your course in front of that. So in this case, we're going to rename it Oakmont_max_min. We're going to save it and keep it open, just minimize it because we're going to be using it quite a bit. Now inside of QGIS, we're going to click on our inner shapefile that we haven't created yet. We're going to edit it by clicking the pencil. We're going to create a draw rectangle geometry and we're going to draw a square around our course, just making it big enough to get our entire course in there. When this pops up, we're going to change this to a whole, the nearest whole number, but we want to make sure it's square. So in this case, 1650 by 1650. Just hit OK. We don't need to do anything on this screen. Now we're going to open up our min-max file that we had already open and enter that 1650 into that field here so we can store it for use later on. We can move this and move it around if you want using the shape, the move functionality, if you need to tweak it just a little bit. Now we're going to do our outer layer. So we're going to edit our outer layer. But now we're going to go back to our inner and we're going to select it using the selector tool. So we're going to click on the selector tool and just click on that inner shapefile. We're going to hit edit, copy its features. Now we're going to go into the outer. We're going to paste that into the outer layer. So now we have those two. They're exactly the same. They're just on top of each other. We're going to go back to inner, unselect the edit, and save it. Now we have our inner shapefile saved on our hard drive. We're going to deselect it so it's no longer visible. We're going to go back to outer, and we're going to open up our calculator because we're going to need to scale this out. We're going to put the outer perimeter distance on there, so 5,000. We're going to divide that by 1650, and we're going to copy the results to our clipboard. Back in QGIS, we're going to use the scaling tool. So select our outer, hit that scale feature, select our outer or our square, our outer square. We're going to paste that into the scaling field and hit enter. And now that'll automatically extend that outer perimeter out to that 5,000 mark that we put in there. You can do less than 5,000, you can do greater than 5,000, although greater than 5,000 probably is going to have diminishing returns because the game itself won't let you do an outer terrain beyond 5,000. So I would not go higher than 5,000. At this point, we're going to uncheck the edit button. We're going to save our outer, and now we have a saved outer and inner shapefile, and we're going to save our project. Okay, back in QGIS, we're going to open up our min-max file. In the outer field there, we're going to put what we put in for outer, in this case 5,000. We're going to save that file, minimize it, don't close it. We're going to use it again, project, and we're saving our project. Next thing is we're going to open up CloudCompare. You should have installed CloudCompare already, but in a separate window, open up in that QGIS folder that we created. There should be a folder called Shapefiles where we just save those shapefiles we created. So open up that Shapefiles folder and take your inner.shp, your inner shapefile, drag it to the blue area of CloudCompare, hit yes to all, rename it by clicking on that polyline. We're going to rename it to inner. Go back to our folder again, This time we're going to take our outer.shp folder or file, put it in there, and rename it to outer. Now we're going to open up the folder where we downloaded all of our LAS files. You know, could be 10, could be 4, could be 15 of them. And we're going to highlight them all and drag them into CloudCompare into the main window. You're going to drag them in. You're going to get a pop-up window. You want to unselect everything in here except for classification. And then you can leave that ignore fields with default values only. Hit apply all, yes to all. And this might take a little bit. It's going to import every single LAS file. Just to speed up the video, I'm going to pause this and we'll come back when it's finished. Okay, our LAS files are imported. We're going to go into the top one that has the little cloud icon next to it. Scroll down, hit shift, select the bottom one with the cloud icon, select the merge button, and then we're going to pick no. At this point, we're going to merge all these files together, and it might take a second, so we're going to pause and come back. And we're going to rename this merged file Oakmont _ merged. All right, we're going to select our newly merged file. After I rename it to merged. And we're going to go up to the filter by value icon. And we're going to add our first filter values of 1.1 to 2.1. We're going to export that. It's going to take a second. I'll pause. And we're going to rename that merged file to ground. We're going to go back up to that merged file again, select it. We're going to do that same filter function again by value. And this time, we're going to enter in 8.1 to 9.1 and export again. And we're going to rename this one water. Now we're going to highlight both of these. Use shift to select them. We can delete that other one. We don't need it anymore. We're going to shift select these. And we're going to merge these two together. Make sure we select no. And we're going to rename this file as well. We're going to rename it to the name of our course, in this case, Oakmont _ merged. We are now on page 9, step 3, which is cropping and rasterizing the merged point clouds. So we're going to do the outer cropping first. So we're going to click on the little, looks like scissors up there. Then we're going to do this little drop down, click the rectangular selection. And just outside of our outer shapefile, we're going to select that. Then we're going to go back up to the toolbar, select the red polygon, let it select it. It'll take a second, then do the check mark. At this point, you can delete the Oakmont merged or the remaining file. Just go ahead and delete it. And then we're going to select the one that's remaining there, the merged segmented. And we're going to rename that. In this case, we're going to rename this one Oakmont _ outer. And now we're going to save it. in our projects folder, under the Oakmont, under the Lidar. Save it as a LAS cloud folder, and click Save. And OK. This is going to take a second, so we'll pause and come back. So now we have that outer. We're going to rasterize it. We're going to click on this little checker box screen up here. I'm going to change the direction to Z, cell height to average, keep the average value, and you just want to make sure that everything else here is exactly the same. I'm going to change this to interpolate. The steps should be 1 at the top if you're in meters. If you're in feet, it's going to be different, so keep that in mind. And then we're going to process this by clicking Update Grid. It may take a little bit, but then that'll be returned. Then we're going to click the raster button. OK. Then we're going to go into our Oakmont folder again, into the TIFF folder this time. And we're going to save this as Oakmont _ outer. Then hit Save. And OK. Now we need to do a very similar process, but for the inner. So we're just going to rename that file inner because we already saved it. So let's rename it to Oakmont inner. Click the little scissor segment icon up here at the top again. Let's uncheck that so we can see everything. The scissor icon, we're going to do the rectangular folder. Now we're going to do it just outside the inner shapefile. Click the red polygon, let it select it. And we're going to hit the check mark to confirm. And now we can delete that inner remaining file like we did before. Check the inner one that we just created, the segmented, and let's rename this to Oakmont inner. We're going to save this as our inner LAS file. And now we have our outer and inner LAS files saved. Now we're going to raster it. So now we're going to go, because we're in meters, we're going to start at 0.025. And what we want to do is whatever value we put here, we want to make sure that this size up here is whatever it is, 8,153 by 8,103, just to make sure that's under 9,000. If you're working in feet, you're going to have to work with some different things that are documented in the documentation that you're following through here. All the other values should be from the same from before. Update grid, yes. And this might take a little time to process depending how big it is. And then we'll have our results. We're going to click raster, and we're going to save this one as Oakmont _ inner. Then hit save. And we notice it's saved down here in the console as well. At this point, we can close or minimize CloudCompare, and we're going to go back into QGIS. In QGIS, highlight your Google layer, and then after you highlight your Google layer, you're going to open up your folder that has your that is your TIFF folder inside of your Oakmont project inside of your QGIS folder. So open up that TIFF folder. That's where we save those Oakmont inner and Oakmont outer from the CloudCompare. So open up that folder, and you're going to take your outer and you're going to drag it into the layers folder, and it'll be placed right above Google. Inside your project, let's double check our properties. Our CRS, again, make a mental note, NAD 83 in this case, 2011. We're going to click on the question mark, and we're going to make sure we change it to the same one inside of that window. Open up our TIFF folder again. Now we're going to drag in inner, and we're going to do the same thing. click on the question mark and change that to the right CRS as well. Okay, let's save our project. Now let's start with our outer TIFF file. Let's go into raster. Let's extract clip raster by extent. And now we're going to make sure that we're going to do our calculate from layer, and we're going to select our outer layer because we are doing our outer raster. The next thing we're going to set here is override the projection for the output file. Then we're going to scroll down in some of these advanced parameters, and then our output data type, we're going to select float 32. And then in our clipped extent field, we're going to do save to file. We're going to go into our QGIS support files. Remember what we renamed it? Oakmont. We're going to go into the Heightmap folder, and we're doing outer, so we're going to go into the outer folder, and we're going to call this file Oakmont underscore Lidar underscore surface underscore, and we're doing outer, so we're going to put outer in here, then click save. And we're going to click run. This might take a little bit to run. After it's done, we're going to click close. Now we're going to go to Oakmont inner and do the very similar thing, raster, extraction, but this time we're going to do inner, so calculate from layer inner. We're going to override the protection for the output file, same as before. Output data type, float 32. We're going to do our save to file. Very similar file name, except we're going to go to the Heightmap inner. We're going to rename this one Oakmont Lidar Surface Inner. Hit save. Run it. Cool. Now we have 2 new TIFF files saved in our QGIS project. Okay, at this point, let's do a little bit of cleanup. Let's delete our Oakmont outer layer. So remove layer. Let's remove our Oakmont inner layer. Remove layer, okay. And let's save our project. So at this point, you may or may not have your min-max Excel file open, but if you don't, we need to make sure that that is open. So your golf course name, in this case, Oakmont min-max, open that back up again. We're going to fill out some more of these values. Go over here to your surface inner, double click on it. And on this screen, make a note of the min and max numbers that you see here on the screen under this band rendering section. You can copy them, you can write them down, but you're going to go and you're going to put these back into that min-max Excel file. Again, if your process is slightly different, just make sure you're following the documentation. Get your max file or your max elevation out of there as well. Put that in there, and you'll notice that we automatically compute your terrain height for you at this point. And then save your XLS file. We need to do the same thing with the outer as well. So double click on that outer, open the properties, and we have a min and we have a max here as well, and just cut and paste those into our min and max of the Excel spreadsheet. And save your spreadsheet. We're still going to need this later on, so you might just want to minimize it. Hit OK. Okay, well now we're going to create using our Google and Bing Maps, we're going to create our overlays. So go to Google first, and we're going to do export, save as, and then on here, make sure you select rendered image here at the top. Make sure that you unselect the create VRT. In the file dropdown, we're going to browse into our overlays folder inside of our QGIS directory there. And we're going to save this as Oakmont _G for Google. Down underneath here, make sure we select our Project CRS. Very important. You should know what that is by now. Go down to Calculate by Layer. We're going to go to Oakmont Lidar Surface Inner, the one we just created. Make sure, because we're doing inner, make sure you have inner selected here. In your columns, 16,000. Rows, 16,000. Not 1,600, not 160, not 16,000. Right? Remove add save file to map and hit OK. Now, while that's working, we can go in and we can start our Bing one. Okay. Same thing, export, save as, rendered image, unselect create VRT, saved file. We're going to call this Oakmont _B for Bing. We're going to do our Project CRS, calculate from layer. We're still doing our inners, so we're going to select that LiDAR inner, 16,000, 16,000. Do not add it. Save file to map here down at the bottom. Uncheck that. Hit OK. Oh, let's wait till the other one's done first, though. So let's pause. So the other one's done. Now we can click OK and start the Bing TIFF overlay processing. While that's processing, you can go back to Google, and we're going to do our outer now. So same thing, right-click Google, export, save as, rendered image, unselect CRT, file name. We're doing Google. We're just going to call this one though _G. Let's do it outer _G. Yeah, we got 2 underscores here. Save. Now, make sure our Project CRS is selected. Calculate from layer. We're going to do our outer this time. Columns. You guessed it. Yep, 16,000, 16,000. Do not add it to the map. Wait till the other one finishes. All right, the other one's finished, so now we're going to process the Google outer. This one might take a while because we got a big area to do. Now we're going to do Bing export for the outer. Same steps as before. Name this one B for Bing. Save it. Project CRS. Calculate from layer. We're going to do the outer again, surface outer. 16,000, 16,000. And add to save, remove, uncheck the add save file to map. Wait for the other one to finish. And click OK. And we'll process our last one, and we'll pause this while that's processing. All right, so that's done processing. So let's save our QGIS project. Back into our Heightmaps file, we now have our inner and outer terrain files. We went over this a little earlier. I inserted it in a little earlier. But now the same file that we were editing earlier, remember that we changed the directory up here, the default directory, to whatever your install directory is of QGIS. So the same directory. Now we're going to alter some of the other things in here. We're going to open up our min-max Excel file. And for our inner, we're going to take our min and we're going to substitute it in for the min that is holding a place inside of this batch file. You can see right there. So we're going to put that value in there. We're going to do the same thing for max. We're going to put the max value in there from our Excel spreadsheet. We're going to save this. Now we're going to go back into our outer folder. Same thing again. Let's open up our outer bat file, drag it into Notepad. Same thing again. We need to take our min and max and sub it into those placeholders inside of this script. And save it. Minimize our Excel spreadsheet. Still not done with it. Now we're going to go back into those folders and we're going to double click on that, and it's going to process that folder, and it's going to make us a raw folder, a raw file rather. Process again, and now we have, if you look inside of our inner and outer folders, we will now have an inner and outer raw file as well, which is what we can use inside of Unity. Now what we're doing is if we go into our overlays folder and we double click on our convert to TIFF or convert to JPEG bat file that's in there, it'll take all of the TIFF files that we just created earlier, and it'll run those and it'll create them, make them into JPEGs, and JPEGs are what we're going to use inside of Unity as our imagery for our terrain overlays. So this is processing, and this will take a little bit, so we'll probably just pause the video while this processes. There we go. Pause it. Now we're back. We'll process all 4 of these files and create JPEGs out of them. Now, if we go into our overlays folder, we should see 4 files in there, our Bing inner outer, our Google inner outer, and we should be able to open them up inside of Paint or whatever photo viewer and just zoom in and make sure they look okay. All right, we have everything we need at this point to go into Unity and get started. So if you open up your base project inside of Unity, and in your project hierarchy, in your main folder called Assets, right click, and you're going to go up to Create, and you're going to do a new folder, and you're going to call this folder Terrain Backup. We're going to go ahead and double click and go into that Terrain Backup folder. Now you're going to open up your inner folder inside of the Heightmap directory of your QGIS project that you've been working on. And you're going to take that inner raw file that we created and you're going to drag it in there. You could do the same thing in the outer. You're going to go into your overlays folder and you're going to take the 4 JPEGs we created and you're also going to drag them into the terrain backup as well. It might take a second to process. You're going to go into your first overlay, go into the inspector in Unity, and you're going to change it to 8192, apply, and this will take a few seconds to process as well. You're going to do the same thing for all of your JPEG overlays, change them all to 8192. Now you're going to go to your scenes folder, double click on import terrain and do a file, save scene as. We're going to go back into our terrain backup directory that we created. We're going to call this the name of our course, Oakmont underscore Lidar underscore scene. And now we have our scene file saved inside of Unity. Now inside the hierarchy area of Unity, right click in that area, go to 3D object, and we're going to create a new terrain. And that terrain is by default going to be called terrain, but we're going to rename it to terrain parentheses inner, because this is going to be our inner terrain where our golf course is actually going to be sitting on. Back in our assets folder, we're going to go down into you'll see that there is going to be a new terrain file that's created inside that assets. That was created when we created that terrain asset inside of the hierarchy. So we're just going to highlight it. We're going to rename that one as well, and we're going to call it our Oakmont underscore Lidar underscore inner. That is actually our terrain file. And we're going to move that file into our terrain backup folder. Now we're going to take our terrain inner. We're going to go to the inspector tab on the right. We're going to click on the cog wheel, and we're going to go down inside of the settings for this layer, and we're going to make some changes. We're going to open up our min-max folder again. Seen that a lot today. Our terrain width, we're going to change that to the 1650 within that top box. Our terrain height, we're going to change to what was calculated based on our min-max. And then our resolution, we're going to make that 4097. That's not based on anything, just 4097. Same thing with the other detail resolution 2048, control texture resolution 2048, base texture resolution 2048. Then we're going to do an import RAW. We're going to go to the directory, our terrain backup directory, where our Oakmont Lidar surface inner.raw resides. Remember, we drug that into that directory inside of the assets. And we're going to click on it, and we're going to open it. Now, we're going to make sure that everything matches in here, right? It should be bit 16. Our width, our height should be 4097. And we're going to make sure that we hit that flip vertically button on there. And then after we do that, we're going to hit import. And we should start to see what looks to be a clay or white colored washed out terrain at this point. So we're making some progress. We're getting closer. Now we're going to go back into the hierarchy again, and then very similar to before, we're going to create our outer terrain. So we're going to right click, 3D object, create terrain. Same thing's going to happen. We're going to have to rename this to terrain outer. And then of course, when we created this inside of our assets folder, we should see a new terrain file again that we're going to rename. We're going to name it Oakmont Lidar Outer. We're going to drag that into our terrain backup folder. Now we're going to go back to our terrain outer, into our cogwheel section of the inspector, and then our terrain width, we're going to change it to whatever we set, from the beginning. That will be inside of that Excel spreadsheet. So you can see that our outer on here was 5,000. Our terrain height is going to be calculated from that. So we took that out of the spreadsheet, and then everything else is like before. So we're going to put 4097. Oops, that should be 2048. Let's change that to 2048. So detail resolution, texture resolution, and texture resolution, base texture resolution, all 2048. Import raw. We're going to import that file again. Make sure you flip vertically. And now we're going to import that raw file into our terrain in Unity. And now we have an inner and outer terrain inside of Unity. But they are not lined up correctly yet. So we need to do some more tweaking here. So let's go to our inner, go to the little paintbrush at the top. Let's add our overlay texture. So we're going to have to go down to our terrain backup, and let's just take our Oakmont G, which is our inner, drag it up, change the size to 1650, 1650. Remember, that's what's in our Excel spreadsheet as the size of that terrain. Click add, and we're starting to see a little bit of things that look like a golf course. Let's go to terrain outer. Same thing, let's add our texture. We're going to use our outer Google on this one, and you can switch the bings out for these if they look better, but we're going to change our size to 5,000 and 5,000, and then click add. Now it looks like we've got some stuff going on here. They're just not aligned yet. So now let's open up our spreadsheet again. And for our position in here, we're going to change this to the positions that are in the bottom of our spreadsheet. Let's open up our spreadsheet again. So you can see the bottom of our spreadsheet here, our position, X, Y, Z. We're going to transpose or copy those into the X, Y, and Z of the transform of our outer, very important, outer terrain layer. And that terrain height that you see that we're putting in here is a good starting point, but you might need to tweak that a little bit. So now as I zoom out, we can see that our inner and outers are aligned. We're going to go to our outer, and we're going to uncheck the base terrain draw because we do not want to be able to draw on our base terrains. All right, we're going to later on, you're going to create a foliage terrain or a grass terrain that you're going to put your plantings and things on. If we scroll back in here, we're now looking at our inner terrain, and we're trying to see if the outer terrain is bleeding up through it all. And we don't see that in this particular case. But what you can do is, and this is in the directions, when we added our overlays, when we went to the inspector and we created that paintbrush and we added our overlay texture, there's a light blue PNG file that is part of the download packages for QGIS. If you use that instead for your outer terrain, you'll get a much better picture, or it'll pop out at you if there's anything from that outer terrain bleeding up through the inner terrain. And then you're just going to go into that transform and just start to lower that outer terrain just a little by little until all that blue area is gone. That's going to take a little bit of artwork from your end just to tweak that. But if you scroll around in here and look around, it should see that everything's lined up. You can see I got bunkers that are lined up. Tee boxes look nice and flat. And basically, we have what is the start of our golf course inside of Unity. So at this point, best of luck in the rest of your project, and I hope to see your golf course inside of GS Pro soon. Thanks.